And welcome to Web Applications for Everybody. We are going to go in this bit of a code walkthrough of the the assignment for profiles, positions, and education. And so there's two real learning objectives for this. One is we want to do a little bit of exercising in JSON, but we're also going to end up with a many-to-many relationship. And so, like always, I've got a whole bunch of things that you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do this. And again, it builds on the previous one. So if I assume you've watched all the previous ones or you have the previous assignments working. So, so let's go ahead and just run this code and demonstrate it. http://localhost web applications for everybody. This is not res position, this is res education. I got stuff in the database. Let's see what I got. Profile. Let's just get rid of all of them. That didn't work. So let's just go here. Delete from profile with no where clause. Delete from profile with no where clause. Sometimes it's nice, no where clause. So now I should have nothing in positions because I could have shown you that, but the cascading foreign key got rid of all that stuff. So we still have our users. And let's check. We got the one user with the hash password, which we're supposed to have. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in some new tables. Here we go. Let's just borrow this out of the assignment and create two new tables with some foreign keys. Go. Okay, so now we have the education. And we're going to use this as a lookup table and have institutions is going to be this lookup table, and we're going to have a many-to-many relationship. This is a two-way link where we have profile ID linking to profile, institution linking to institution, and so each of the people are going to have, when they choose an education, and we'll see how that works in a second. And then I've got to seed the institution table with some interesting data. So go into the institution table and insert some data. And so now in our institution table, we've got some institutions. Okay? So now that we've built this, let's log in. Hit the cancel. UMSI.edu. I guess that's the right password. No. PHP 123. My browser's keeping those passwords. Okay, add the new entry. So a lot of this looks the same. Got first thing in the position, it's like from before. But education is a little different. Okay, so this is the one we're going to do differently. So in education, we're going to hit the plus. We're going to say 1990. And then we are going to have this school. But what we're going to do is we're implementing a type ahead. And that's in the assignment to implement a type ahead. And it tells you how to build the type ahead. So if I type UN, University of, I can choose this. Now the interesting thing is this is using JSON and Jquery. So if I do a view developer console, and this is how those things work. I don't know if you can see it now. Let's do that again. Let's empty this out. Basically what happens is you've told Jquery that as people type, call server-based code for the prefix. And so there's a database query that's going into this database table here looking for prefixes UN. So if I type UN, see that it actually made a query. And in that query, if you look at the response to that query is a little table, right, of all the, and that did a select using a like clause. Select using a like clause. Like is kind of a wild card. Percent is like the wild card character. So this is going to be UN%, like university, UN%, and then that matches those prefixes. Now, when I pick one of these things, it really is still all in the browser. It's all jQuery, and this is still just a text field. There's nothing tricky here. This is a sort of an intelligent text field. Let's move this over. Let's make this wider. This is an intelligent text field that, that now has a value of University of Michigan. And when it gets submitted, it just gets submitted as a string. And you'll see what we do when we submit it. Okay, and so that's the tricky bit, is to add this. And what we want is we want the users to reuse existing ones or make new ones. So you can even add a new one called 199.6 Lansing Community College. This doesn't match anyone, but it's going to end up inadvertent. It's going to add one and then link it together. And so if I hit this add button and I take a look, you'll notice in the institutions, by me typing a new one, Lansing Community College has been added here. And so then if we look at the profile, I got a profile. This is me. I got some positions. No, just got one position. And then I got education entries. And so if I look at the education entries are a many-to-many, pointing at profile ID 10 and institution ID 1, which was the Cambridge one, I think. You can find out. Cambridge. No, that was University of Michigan. And then 10 is the Lansing Community College one. And so we got a lot of stuff that we got to make work. We can, of course, edit these things. And we can delete a position and then add a different position. Pizza Hut. And of course we have some code that shows these things with a little bit, some queries that put all this together and print that all out. And so that's kind of how it works. I'll go ahead and delete it and then log out. And so that's pretty much how it works. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit about the code and walk through the code. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the code. And I think I'm going to focus this time on the edit code. In other ones, I focused on the add code. You know, the idea is not to give you all the code, but to be able to have you work the pieces out together. So let's take a look at edit. This is quite a bit more complex. It depends heavily on the util code. I keep moving more and more of the code that's like between add and edit into util, just because I don't like repeating myself. And the head code's important as well, so we'll take a look at the head code. And so really I've got jQuery, I've got some CSS in here for Bootstrap and jQuery, and then jQuery UI. And jQuery UI is where this little autocomplete thing comes from. And I give you this head guy in the handout, so you can just borrow that. So again, this looks pretty familiar now. We got some util stuff. We got the script protecting itself. We got handling the cancel button. We're demanding a profile ID get parameter right there. If there isn't one, it just blows up and gets mad. And then it basically makes sure that we do have a profile. It's also validity checking this number now by reading this across and doing the select for the profile. And this and user ID equals the session. This is the way to, if you'll notice, now you're supposed to do this where if you look at the profile, there's also a foreign key into the user table. And so what I'm looking for is, I'm not just letting anybody, I'm protecting myself, that you can't just put a profile and it doesn't belong to you. That has to also match the user ID, right? So that's what I'm saying here. If the profile ID is the one from from the request, and the session ID is the user ID is the one from the session. And I'm only going to let you retrieve profiles that belong to you. That's kind of what I'm saying there. Okay, and so this is, at this point, you know, that was mostly security and checking and making sure and being safe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then we have our post code, and it should look familiar. The validate profile code, validate position, that's all in util. There it is, validate profile. And it's basically returning a true or an error string. and if it's a string, I do the error, and if the positions are wrong, I do an error. My whole goal is to make sure that the profiles are valid. Okay, and it looks like I did not validate the education, so I should do that. I guess I should. Let's do this. Should validate education. Put a to-do in there. That's actually what coders do, because we all kind of, even this text editor knows that. Okay, begin to update the data. Okay, so this is all pretty straightforward. All we're doing is we're updating the profile, which is this table right here with the new stuff. And that's pretty much the same as it's been the last couple of assignments. And then we're going to take the position entries for the profile. And this is a many-to-one relationship. Let's go ahead and change this. Let's get 2 positions in here. 1980. Pizza Hut, save. So now we got 2. Let's go back here, browse. We've got 2, right? 2 positions for a profile. This is a many positions to one profile. So that's a many-to-one relationship. Okay, so this is the old trick, right? In the middle of the edit, I might have deleted one of these things and added another one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all the old ones. Okay, all the old ones, and then add the new one. And so I'm going to wipe them all out. So delete from position where profile equals. Now we already know that this is good because we tested it way far above. And then I've moved the code to insert the positions. It's the same as the previous assignment, but I've now inserted it into this util code. Here is insert positions. And it's going to take the database connection and the profile ID, and it's just going to loop through these things, do validate, if they're there, do validity checking on them, and then insert them. And in the edit case, we're not inserting, and so it's the old profile ID, because we already know what the profile ID is. It's coming in on that GET request, right? And so that's coming in. And we're going to do the same thing for education. We're going to clear out the educations that hook up to, so if I go into education, is there only one in here? Yeah, let's put another one in. Let's make another education. 1995 Duke University. Save. So now we should have, right, so this is a many-to-many. We could have many profiles going to, many institutions going to one profile and many profiles going to one institution. So if we had a second profile in here, then we could add another profile, and there could be, so that's a many-to-many relationship. And I'll go through that in some detail once I've taken a look at the code. And so we're still above the line, right? We're still in the model code, so I'm going to load all of the positions and all the schools into arrays, and that is here. Here is just a select. I'm using this fetch all that you may not have seen before. When you have a select that's going to return multiple rows, and you just want an array of the rows, and each row, of course, is an array. It's going to be a linear array of rows, and a key value array is each row. You can use this thing called fetch all, and it really is, you've probably seen me do this before, where I just while my way through it, looking to see if the row is, as long as the row is not false, just keep adding on to the end of that array. But that's built right into PDO. And you might think, oh, that's going to do a lot of rows. Well, you're supposed to use limits and clauses and things to make sure that in any query you're doing, you're not bringing back a billion records. So this fetch all turns out to be a really useful thing, and it replaces 4 lines of code with 1 line of code. And so, I'm going to just do the same thing. I've got pulling the institutions in, and you can kind of see this when you're looking at the view guy. This is the, that's going to give you 1, 2 educations and 1, 2 positions, and that's what these give you back is an array where each one of these is a row. Okay. And so in edit, I load them up, I leave them in positions in schools, because the first thing you always have to do in edit is you have to read what's in the database and you have to render it in forms, right? So you got to make this, if you inspect this element, we take a look at it, this pattern is kind of the same. Well, the edu year one, that one we haven't done yet. So let's look at the positions. Inspect the positions. So year one and then desk one. Remember the pattern, year one, desk one, and then position two is year two and desk two. And that, of course, correlates with this, where we're pulling the stuff out of the post database down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how we're kind of looping through sort of an array of fields, as it were. It's kind of an array we're constructing by concatenation. Okay? And so if we take a quick look at this education code, there's a plus there. And let's just take a look at the JavaScript, although this should be familiar with to you because it's not that different. The add pose, remember the add pose? We are going to go there and grab the little plus sign, and then every time you click it, we're going to add a new thing and then concatenate some strings together and automatically count these things up. So for education, we're going to do the exact same thing. Count them up, and we're actually going to we're going to do this one a little bit different. We've got this edu template, which is just some text in here. Oops. So this is a pattern for putting sort of hidden text in. We make a script tag, and I give it an ID and a type equals, instead of type equals JavaScript. And now this is just a little string, and I'm going to replace this at count with the number. So you see this at count, I just made this up. So I'm doing a string replace. Let's go up here, and I am doing right here, I'm going to grab the source, that is that text down there. Then I am going to do a replace of at count at with the little number. And so it's kind of doing the same thing as this is. It's just a little, it's 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. This is kind of ugly and a little harder to get syntactically correct. I'm using kind of a template in this second one. Okay. Okay, so that's how we do that. But we also then have to, I kind of skipped ahead here. We have to, when we're showing this page, we have this array of schools and we have an array of positions. And if there is more than 0 schools, we have to loop through, and we're going to start with this variable count edu. Now the interesting thing is this is a PHP variable for now. It's the same name as the one we used in JavaScript. You'll see this in a second. So what I have to do is I have to construct the markup. So when I just display it, these markups are coming from PHP, looping through the existing things that it pulled out of the database. Okay? And so we make the div. If there's some schools, we put out the div edu1. That's probably easiest to show the position because you're kind of familiar with that. So we have the plus value for the add pose. We have the div. You'll notice that, let me go down here a bit. If there are nothing here, we just have an empty div, and that's where we'll put the new ones. So we have count positions here, and then we put out the div, we give it an ID. Based on count position, we get input type equals text, year 1, year 2, year 3, and then we take the old data, the old year out of the position, and then we take the old description out of the position, taking care to call HTML entities, and we construct the jQuery to get rid of it. So we're constructing this little minus sign to say go to # position 1 and remove it. So if I go like this, position 1, it goes away, poof, right? So that's generating this, and away you go. And we do a similar thing for the educations. We have an educational counter, we have a little field, we have a little plus, another plus guy, and then we have a field, and it goes round and round. And and constructs all this markup. So all this markup is coming from PHP, right? The 1, 2, 3, Edu Year 1, Edu School 1, the school, and that's all just strings at this point. Value equals University of Cambridge. This, of course, here has been HTML escaped. With HTML entities, away you go. So when this code is all done right here in the server in PHP, we have this variable countPos, which is the number of existing positions that have come out from the server. And then we have our form, and then we go into JavaScript, right? So we're in HTML. So we've exited PHP. We're back in HTML. We're printing out the submit form and the cancel form right here. Save and cancel. And now what we're doing is we're saying countPos, this is a JavaScript variable, equals, and now we drop into PHP, the value of the PHP. So I'm going to just refresh this screen and give you a sense of what's going on there. View page, so this is a trick. This is in effect trickily passing the results of a PHP computation into a JavaScript variable, because I'm going to need that JavaScript variable. See this? So countPos equals 2. There's 2 of them. And that's coming from here. It's just this little 2 is the number of things that were generated from the PHP. So the PHP goes like that. It generates the 1 and the 2. This is probably an easier way to look at it, right? And then the position 1 and 2. And then this way, it means that when we hit the plus button, so I haven't hit the plus button. So if I hit the plus button, it's going to be number 3. So if I hit plus and inspect this, because countPos starts at 2, and the first thing this JavaScript code does is adds 1 to countPos. Now we're in JavaScript, and then it builds this new div. So this is the new div, and these were the old 2 divs, and they look the same. And if I do an inspect element, you will see that this is year 3. And countPos is 4 at this point, so if I hit it again, it's going to be year 4. Hit this plus again, then this next one down here is going to be year 4. I haven't submitted anything. I'm just kind of playing with a document object model at this point. Okay. And count edu, add edu is doing the same thing. It's just instead of doing this ugly careful string concatenation, it is making a template with this @count that I just made up to be the substitution point for that little number, whatever that little number is. Okay. Okay, so that really had nothing to do with JSON, which is one of the things. And so the JSON part is kind of simple and boring. The JSON is Jquery Autocomplete. So I'm just using this Jquery Autocomplete widget. And this is how it works. You can have a tag, just an input, and then you basically say, hey, let's hook this up and go to this tag and autocomplete with the source of the list. Now this one is showing a list in a JavaScript variable, but you can also make the list come from a PHP file that goes into the server. Okay? And I mentioned this way at the beginning, so let's review this. And so let's take a look at let's go and make it fresh. Let's add an education. 2001. So now view developer console network. Okay, so edu school has class equals school. Okay, class equals school. So every one of these text areas that I want to have autocomplete working on, I've put a CSS class on them. And then I can, in a single JavaScript line, well, 3 JavaScript lines, say, hey jQuery, go find all of the tags with school, class equals school, and make them autocomplete fields. And the source of the autocomplete data is this in-server PHP script called school.php. So here's school.php. It does a select with a like clause, and it uses a %, so that's like UN%. And then it sends it back in JSON. So it retrieves all these rows, pulls out the name of the school. Remember that the institution looks like this, Here's all the names of the schools, right? Remember Lansing Community College, I added, because I put that in, because you can cause it to add a new one. Okay? Well, it's a complex one, isn't it? It's a complex one. That's why we're near the end of the class. Okay, so if I type L, it sends a request. I had to build this PHP code, and it says, go do a select and give me all the institutions in the system that have L as the prefix. And then all this other stuff, that was all done by jQuery and jQuery UI, all that pretty UI. I didn't make any of that. And now this is now simply a text field. Okay, so if we inspect this, it is just a text field. The value's for some reason not really here. I don't know why that is, but that'll get fixed before we hit the submit button. So now what I want to walk you through is the submit button here. So let's also add another one. No, not a position. I didn't want that one. Goodbye. Let's add another education. 2005. School of Driving. So that doesn't meet any criterion. As a matter of fact, if we did a view developer console, I probably should have showed you this as it was going. Let's look at the network. School of, so it said, oh, what starts with school of? And the answer is nothing starts with school of, which is okay. We're still allowed. It's just a text field. School of Driving. So the way this works is this is going to be a many-to-many. So we know that Lansing, I'm going to hit the save in a second here and show you what's going to happen. University of Cambridge already exists. Duke University already exists. Lansing Community College already exists. School of Driving does not already exist. And so let's take a look. So school.php was just to get the UI. When we hit the submit button, we're going back to edit.php way at the top, way at the top, way at the top. Insert educations, okay? So it's like you've got Edu Year 1, School Name 1, Edu Year 2, School Name 2, and this is going to do all that stuff. And again, because we're in the middle of an edit, we already know what the profile ID, it's 11. We're also going to use the trick to delete out the old entries, right? We're going to clear out the old position entries, and not the position entries. That's a typo. We're not cleaning out the institutions. We're cleaning out the education entries. These institutions are still here. The education entries are the entries that map from a user to a school that indicate that they're at that school. By the way, we're modeling the year as data. We're modeling the year as data on that many-to-many link. Okay, so let's go to Insert Educations and take a look. This is probably, well, this is the most complex thing we're going to do. So we'll make our screen bigger and we'll make our text smaller because, okay, insert positions, not too bad, right? So here is the Insert Educations. It's got a little more to it. So the first, we're going to go through, we got these we got this post date of Edu Year 1, Edu School 1, Edu Year 2, Edu School 1. That is this data, Edu Year 1, Edu School 1, Edu Year 2, School 2, da da da. If it's non-blank, if it is blank, we're going to sort of I guess we're not even doing validations because we should have validated it before, but we didn't do it yet. That'd be something you could do, is add cool validation. So the key is we got this variable school, which is the string name school, which is like Duke University. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up in the institution, select institution ID from institution where name equals name. So where name equals Duke University. So we're going to go into institution, where name equals Duke University, and we're going to find one, and so we're going to get a 6 there. So we're going to be good. So that basically says, and we're going to do a fetch. Now remember, if it does not there in SQL, that's not a bad thing. Row becomes false, but it's not like a failure. You said, give me the record where this is true, and the answer is there were none. That's a valid answer. Okay? So if the row is not false, that means we got a row. Well, we know what the primary key of that institution is, which is 6. So that means that institution ID is going to be 6. In the case where I just typed in the School of Driving, institution ID is going to still be false, right? We set it to false and we didn't set it to a number. Then I'm going to do an insert into the institution. And so I'm going to insert in the institution table. So I'm going to add one to this. I haven't hit the button yet, so it's not going to do it, but there'll be a new one added. It'll get the number 11 if all goes well. And I'm going to ask PDO, because I just did an insert, and say, hey, what was the institution that you just inserted? What was the primary key? In this case, it'll be 11. And so at this point, by this line right here, I either have looked up the old institution or inserted it. So I don't exactly know nor care which of those two things happened, but I do have this variable institution ID that I know is the primary key of either the old institution that was already there or a one that was just recently inserted. So that's pretty cool. Remember, rank is just my little way of having a sort order. If you go over here, I just make those go up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I know which order they are in case the years aren't in order. I don't want to order by year, I'm ordering by rank. Okay, so profile ID, it's a many-to-many, right? Profile ID, institution ID, year came from the post data, and rank is the little number. And we're done because I've got that working. So let's go now and see when I hit this button what's going to happen. You'll also see that, well, actually these guys are going to get deleted, but then they're going to get re-added because there's no primary key being built here. This is the many-to-many table that's pointing to 2 primary keys, a primary key in profile and a primary key in institution. So I'm going to hit the button. I've been threatening to hit the button. Now I'm going to hit the button. Clunk. Okay, so now what we should see is these should be the same. We should see one more because did we add 2 more? I don't know. We added 2 more. Oh, Lansing Community College. And then 11, if you look at 11 is the School of Driving. And if we look in the institution table, we see that it inserted an 11 School of Driving. So it ran this. If there was no institution, insert it. So we ran it. We got back this 11. The 11 came back here in PDO insert last insert ID. So that's really good. And then we inserted this record, the 1111, profile 11, institution 11. And so now there are 4 education, 4 educations, and so we see 4 educations. And it all works. So that's a bit of a walkthrough of this really complex and important thing where we're starting to show, as we go forward, there'll be increasing ways to use JSON to back end what we're doing in JavaScript and changing the UI. So I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you do well on this assignment.